Linda Israel here, and today I want to share with you how I made a couple of cards. One of them is this card here, and I won't make this card today, but I'll kind of describe it to you. What I've done is I have folders or pockets where I put my scraps of paper. So whenever I have little bits of paper, for example, I had a pocket that had bits of purple in it, I will take those bits and put it in that pocket, and when I'm ready to make a card, I'll pull that pocket of that color out and I'll make a card. So today what I've done is I have my pocket of little bits of white scraps. There's a piece of textured in here that I'm really interested in using today because I've done it before and I want to do it again today. And I want to use some Brutus Monroe inks. One of them is the Alabaster ink, Pigment ink. It's a really yummy pigment ink. Makes a beautiful white crisp image. The Black Raven detail ink. And then I want to use a new stamp from Brutus Monroe that is a botanical background. Let me see if I can get it. Here we go. Botanical background. Now I'm going to use the whole stamp. I'm going to use part of this stamp, and I'll show you that in just a moment. But this is the card that I made, and I use bits and pieces. There's texture here. Then I use some black with the white alabaster up at the top. This little dove is a piece of metal that I die cut from all things, a soda can. I won't die cut those today, but I'll show you both sides of the piece so that you'll get a better idea of what that is. And then here is the botanical background that I stamped and placed at the bottom. So come along and watch me make this card, and hopefully it'll give you some ideas what to do with those bits and pieces that you have in your stash. This is the bin where I put my scraps while I'm working. It is just to the right of me. So if I have a little bit of paper, like this piece of green that I used on my Cricut, I'll just dump it in here while I am working. When my bin gets full, I pull out these folders or pockets, and each one has colors in them by purple, blue, and I just put all the bits inside. That way, if I'm working on a project that I want bits of blue, I just pull this pocket of blue and bring it to my workstation. Linda Israel here, and what I've done is the packet of paper that I showed you earlier, I pulled out a couple of pieces that I had. I think this is wallpaper. It's highly textured, and I need to cut this. This is a couple of pieces that were torn out of a book, possibly a Reader's Digest. We're going to use the botanical background. We're going to use detailed raven ink and the alabaster, and then a couple other stamps that I have here, and I'll describe those as I go. The first thing that I need to do is to cut this piece of paper, so I'll have it ready for my card. I usually like to make what I call my card topper that I'm going to place on a sheet of paper that I've cut in half. So this was a 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper that I've cut in half and I've scored, and so now this is considered what's called an A2. So it is 4 1/4 across by 5.5 inches tall. Now I'm going to take this piece of paper, and my camera doesn't quite give you the whole shot, but I'm going to cut this at 5 1/4. Actually, I think I want to make it a little bit bigger than that. I'm going to make it just shy of 5 inches. And then I'm going to cut it just shy of 4 1/4. And it looks like I'll have a little piece left over that I can use on another card. So that'll fit on the front of my card here. Then I'm going to take this piece and I'm going to cut it at 2.5 inches. So now I've got these two pieces to work with, but I also want to cut this down to, let's see, let's make this one 5 inches. So now I've got a layer that I can put on here, like so. I have a piece of scrap black here, and I have a couple of stamps. One of them is from Sharon's script. It is all of these wonderful little sayings that Christopher Allen's mother hand wrote, and then they turned them into stamps. And one of them that I have is Happy Anniversary. And what I want to do is I want to take the Alabaster ink in white. I'm going to ink this stamp up. I'm going to stamp this across the bottom right of this black cardstock. So it makes it a nice bright white. And then I have this little swirl design from Stampabilities. And I'm also going to use the Alabaster white. So I've got nice coverage there. And I want to stamp it just above the Happy Anniversary. So now we've got both images there. Now pigment ink takes longer to dry on cardstock. So I'm going to do two things. I'm going to clean my stamps, and then I'm going to use a heat tool to set this so it'll dry faster. So I'll be right back. The image is dry. Now I want to trim this because I don't want to use the whole piece on my card. I've got a small paper cutter. So I'm going to trim this down to right about there. And then I'll go. I'm not really measuring this. I'm just kind of eyeballing how I think it will look around the image. I'm going to use my corner rounder from Crocodile and just corner round it. So now all the corners have been rounded. I'm going to go back with the Alabaster white pigment ink, and I'm going to go around the corners and sides. And that just finishes off that piece. So I'm going to let that set aside and dry. Prior to starting the video, and in my stash, I cut pieces of cardstock, and I have a whole stack of them. So here's a whole stack. There's probably 10 or 15 in there of artist trading card side pieces of paper that is 2.5 inches by 3.5 inches, because I make a lot of artist trading cards too. If you've seen my blog and YouTube videos, I used to make a ton several years ago because I was a member of a group and we made artist trading cards every single week. I don't make near as many as I used to, but I still make some. And what I find is this size lends itself very nicely to being an element on a greeting card. And I have my Misty here in front of me. I've preloaded the Botanical background. And what I'm doing is just setting this in my Misty. I'm not going to use the magnets today because I'm not really worried about having a bad image because this works pretty well with the Misty. I'm using my Detail Raven ink here, and I'm going to ink up this image and then stamp. I got a new shipment from Brutus Monroe, and I'm so happy they sent me a large ink pad because it doesn't take me near as long to ink up these big images. When they first sent me the little bitty stamp pad, it was taking me forever to ink up these large images. So I'm so much happier that I have this big stamp. All right, so I have 2 pieces that are stamped, but I'm only going to use one, so we'll pick one of these. I'm going to set this aside. So which should I pick? I think I like the bottom one. I'm going to take my Detail Raven ink and I'm going to go around the edge and just give this a little more of a finished look and kind of distress it, if you will. I just think that finishes it off. I'm going to do it to the other one too, because that way I can use it later. Now earlier I said I would show you the die cuts. Now if you'll notice the different colors on the back side, that is from a Coca-Cola. And I can tell by the color that that is from a Dr. Pepper can. I use gloves and I cut apart soda cans, and then I take a steel rule die or a template that I use with a piece of paper and trace it on, and I cut out shapes out of the aluminum can. Then I'll use an embossing folder and I will cut the shapes and then emboss the shapes. So I want to color now this little dove. It's a little dove because I think it'll go with my happy anniversary. To keep my work surface somewhat clean, I've got a piece of chipboard here. And what I'm going to do next is picking up my detail ink, because I want this to have some black with a little bit of the silver shinings through, and I'm just going to press this onto the metal. Sometimes your fingers will get dirty, but that's what the stamp cleaner will do, is help clean your hands. And I am just pushing this on here, giving that a little bit of color. If you want this to spread a little bit, I have a little bit of alcohol and I will just spray just a little bit on here, and that will help spread that around. Now I'm going to use a heat tool to set the ink. Now we're going to start assembling the card. So I'm going to glue down this wallpaper piece. I'm just using standard white glue by Olene's. It's one of my favorites because it's inexpensive. I'm all about being frugal. I like to spend my money on tools that may be a little bit harder to find, and save money on glue because those are easy things to find. And I'm just placing this where I think it looks pleasing to me. Now before I put these other 2 pieces on there, I'm going to take my stamp pad and just very lightly, using the edge, I'm going to just give this a little bit of a kiss over the top. So you can see that it gave just a little bit across that texture so you can see it. I'm going to place a little bit of glue on my artist trading card piece. And a piece of glue on the happy anniversary black portion. And I'll use some white glue on the back side of the dove. I'm going to place weight on there for a moment while I get my next thing ready. I've got some glimmer mist here, and what I'm going to do is splatter my card with a little bit of glimmer mist. So while I'm shaking this, I'm flattening my card just a little bit. So I've placed this inside my box because sometimes when you splatter it gets really messy. I just put a few splatters on there. Of course, if I weren't making a video, I would let the block sit on there longer so that it would flatten my card out. But there is my finished card. Here's the one that I made earlier. As you can see, they're very similar. I hope that you could see how simple it was just to take a focal image, adding the text with the white with the alabaster, using the background pieces, and again going back to the other cards that I made. This was made with the same artist trading card idea. This was stamped at the top with the same script stamps from Sharon's script. This was a stamp that I had in my stash that I stamped across the top. This is the same metal, done with the same technique of smushing the ink pads to it. This is the alabaster white on a piece of blue. There is the Botanical. There's from the Sharon script, another stamp. The metal again, colored with the ink pads from Brutus Monroe. From Sharon's script again, the background, another piece of metal, colored with the inks from Brutus Monroe. I added bows to those, but I didn't think the one today with the black needed the bow. I thought it was elegant enough. Well, I hope that this has inspired you to use up your bits and pieces in your scraps to make some beautiful greeting cards using the Botanical background from Brutus Monroe, as well as the Detail Raven ink and the Alabaster ink, maybe a little bit of Tattered Angels sprinkled or spritz on there on top. If you have any questions, let me know. There's a link below that'll take you to the blog. It'll also show you all of the ingredients of the card that I made today. If you have any questions, let me know. Please make sure you give this video a thumbs up, that you comment, you subscribe. We're here for you to help you on your card making or art creations. And as Christopher Allen likes to say, create your own ending. Thanks for watching today. Bye.